All right, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of July 10th, 2014 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker's cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current DRB agendas are available by by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at their discretion. Roll call. Mr. Mardian.
Here.
Mr. Malikian. Is absent. Ms. Palmer.
Here.
And Mr. Simonian.
Present.
Great. Report regarding the posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on July 2nd, 2014. Oral communications. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak on an item not part of the agenda? Any cards by any chance?
I have none here.
Okay. Then we are down. Jay, do you have any announcements? We're down to the regular review calendar. No announcements? Okay. Then we'll start with the first case at 827 South Glendale Avenue.
And that's case PDR 1406698. And Mr. Platt, can you?
I will present this for Jeff Hamilton. This is a case that the board heard almost a year ago on August 22nd of last year. You probably remember the Enterprise Rent-A-Car proposal at the northwest corner of South Glendale and Garfield Avenue. The proposal has been considerably redesigned from what the board previously saw. A new architect was brought on, and staff is pleased with the design and believes that it meets all of your conditions that were imposed. I'll just quickly run you through some of the details, and then I'll present the drawings just to indicate how the project changed from what you saw before. The proposal is for a 1,539 square foot, one-story commercial structure. It's on a lot of 16,610 square feet, and there will be 29 parking spaces provided. The existing car wash will remain and will be somewhat modified to enhance its design. The commercial building on the site is an old Craftsman house that was converted to commercial in the early 90s. It's been significantly altered and its setting is lost. So in staff's opinion, there are no CEQA issues. It's not considered a historic resource any longer. The project is in the C31 commercial zone to the north and south, as well as to the east. The zoning is the same. It abuts a medium-density residential zone, an R2250 zone to the west, and it's separated by a 10-foot alley from the existing enterprise lot to the commercial building. I'll just run you through the drawings, I guess, up here. If you remember the previous presentation, there was let's just say a lack of clarity in the drawings to the point that staff was confused about the orientation of the building, the board was confused, and I think to some degree the architect had also been confused. The drawings weren't clear, but if you remember, the general shape of the building consisted of this bay with a curving roof and then a flat roofed portion. We had a lot of problems with some of the proportions and some of the detailing, and the board recommended many conditions. I believe 17 conditions for the project. The redesign significantly improves the overall design, retaining some of the character features that are, I believe, part of the enterprise goal to have a curving roof shape on their new projects. But if we look at the site plan, the original proposal was oriented in a north-south orientation. This proposal may be a little more square, but does have more of an east-west orientation. There will be two existing driveways that access the site. There's parking for for clients coming in, and then there's also parking for the rental car storage. This is the existing car wash building here. The board had asked for a landscape buffer to be placed along the south facade along Garfield, so just over 5 foot planter has been placed here, and the building has been moved up to the north accordingly. There's also fairly extensive landscaping along this facade, and then also along the alley facade. In terms of layout, we have a street entrance coming in off of Glendale Avenue, as well as an entrance to the waiting area for clients that faces out to the parking lot, which we think is appropriate. There are many aspects of the previous kind of layout that I think made for an awkward composition, and the board took issue with. If you look at the elevations, we have a fairly simple material palette consisting of corrugated metal elements, smooth stucco elements, a sheet metal cornice, and a standing seam metal roof at the curved section of the building, and then this projecting metal canopy, which will cantilever off the facade. This is the Garfield Avenue facade. This is the facade facing onto the parking area, and this is the street facade facing Glendale. You can see in the renderings here that the building will have nice sculptural volumes. The HVAC, which was an issue in the previous proposal, will be screened from view behind this kind of raised parapet area, which also provides signage facing south. And then the sign band coming around the building carries the green color, which is a signature of Enterprise Rental Car, plus provides signage opportunity facing Glendale and then also facing the parking lot to the north. At the bottom here, this is the existing car wash. A block wall will be built in front of the car wash on the east side of it, and it'll have a planter bed in front of it so that climbing plants can screen the car wash to some degree. Roof plan, there was a concern about drainage on the previous proposal. There'll be internal drains draining the flat area of roof, and then obviously the curved roof will drain onto that flat section. So if you'd like, I can run through the conditions and explain how staff feels the proposal meets those conditions.
Is that the only signage?
Yes, there'll be the 3 signs on the 3 sides of the
No
building.
pole signs or?
No pole signs. So the board's conditions, I overstated the case. There were 12, not 17.
Do we need to go through them? I don't know that we need to go through
I'm
those.
fine if you don't want to.
Do we have any questions on the presentation?
I had a question on the corner tower. On the roof plan, it's called metal screen, but is that a framed structure?
Yeah, that's a frame structure, and the corrugated metal will serve as the screening.
Just to make sure that it is framed.
Yeah, it's a structural. You can double check with the architect, but I think that's the only way they could build that.
One other question, the AC unit location, there's an opening on the roof plan. Where is that on the elevation on the west side?
The opening in the roof plan?
For the accessing the AC unit.
That would be facing west,
Yeah,
so it's not visible in the rendering. But let's see. It may.
Because how do you access it? See, that's
You
the
should
right-
be
right
able
there.
to. I
Right
believe it should be
Should be there.
something. Yeah, there might be something missing. You can double check with the architect. But the plan does show that there's an opening for access.
Any other questions?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, with that, I'm going to, we have one card, and it's Armin Kazanchian. You come up and give your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Armin Kazanchian. I'm the current architect on the job. Jay did such a great job of explaining it, so I won't give you lengthy explanations. And there is an error on the drawing. There should have been that equipment screen does not extend. There should have been a line there. Just very briefly, we basically looked at your conditions. We agreed with all of them, and we designed the project from scratch. The only thing we kept was the roof shape. But we wanted to make that an interior volume as well, instead of just a planted-on shape on the roof. So the customer waiting area, the counter and the cubicles are sort of under that volume, whereas the private spaces, the offices, the restrooms, and the break room are under the lower flat roof volume. So we agreed with the site issues, so we oriented the building with the long axis east-west and pushed it back. We put a screen in front of the car wash canopy that was going to be exposed once the building was demolished. And I think we were successful in meeting all the conditions, so I hope you would agree and approve the project.
I have one question. The wall that's adjacent to the car wash, on the first sheet, it says it's 7 feet. The second sheet, it says it's 8 feet.
From recollection, it should be 7 feet. The intent of it wasn't to completely touch the bottom of the roof.
This might be a correction.
Yeah, it might be. Oh, and just to one more comment, just so there isn't any issues down the line. We're working on 2 other projects with the same design, so I'm finding out that we need 2 AC units on the building because of the high volume and the low volume. So it might very well be, and if you object to this, I think we can make it work with 1 AC unit. But it might very well be that I'd like to extend that screen on the Garfield elevation slightly further so that I'm able to accommodate 2 AC units behind it. That's an issue. If that's an issue, we can make it work.
How
with
much
1.
further would that be?
I would say about 8 feet. So about
8 feet?
8 feet, yes. Close to if you can see the roof plan.
So approximately
Yeah,
to
approximately
over
there.
here.
More or less the midpoint of the building.
Yeah. And we did that corner sort of, we put the restrooms in that corner and made a jagged corner to sort of open up and give some more landscaping at the intersection of the 2 streets. So,
Your square footage is not that high, excuse me, can I ask?
Go ahead.
Your square footage is not that high, you can't meet it with this 1 unit?
we can do it. It's going to be, I think, a comfort issue where the smaller, low-volume spaces might end up being a little colder and the high-volume space might. So, but if it's a design issue, I've talked to my mechanical engineer. We can do it both ways.
Since you're up here, clarify for me, I'm having a little scale issue with the proportions of the perspective versus the elevations on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are we going with? Because the score lines seem to be in the center on top, and the elevations show a higher
You can come up here.
score line.
That top of the volume, the curved volume, is about 20 feet. And we use that canopy structure, that's the sort of the sign band, to break down that volume so it doesn't look like a huge volume and give it a human scale. So that sign band is 3 feet and the bottom of it is 9 feet.
Well, I'm talking about the
Oh.
score lines in here in proportion to that.
Tried our best to make it as accurate as possible.
I like the perspective part of it, and
I think it just foreshortens in the perspective a little bit. It's a 12-foot plate line there, so that with the parapet wall, it's about 14 feet.
Any other questions? Art?
As far as the window system is concerned, overall it's going to be a storefront system,
It's going to be a black framed aluminum storefront system with clear glazing, yes.
and some of the fixed windows, are they going to be storefront as well?
Yes. And
So all the glazing is going to be storefront?
Yes, even the punched openings. The treatment of the building is there's 2 volumes. One is an enclosed with punched openings, and then the other one is more open, but it's all going to be storefront windows.
are you going to have a recess in it?
The ones on the, it's going to be about a 2-inch recess. It's a 2x6
I
wall.
want
on
to see the full 2-inch
Yeah.
frame. Sometimes I see them covering half of it.
Right.
So,
The 1 inch.
yeah, and it makes the bill.
Any other questions?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. I'm going to close the public session. Mr. Simonian.
Well, this is a very big improvement from what was presented to us before. The previous design, I remember vividly, we had so many concerns, and it took us a while to orient ourselves and to understand it, and there just was a lack of general design knowledge and also design direction. So this has addressed those factors. We have a nice curving roof that's actually opening up, bringing in northern light, which won't allow that space to really get too hot, but at the same time bring in a lot of natural light. And at the same time, they've divided up the public and private spaces within the building in such a way where it kind of fits the context in that corner. The actual corner itself, I like the way that it's been addressed. It does break up the building quite nicely, and overall compilation of the colors, the metal, corrugated metal siding, and the other materials are cohesively working with one another. I do think the corner tower piece is quite nice in that sort of a proportion, where if it extends to the midpoint of the building, it might kind of be a bit overpowering, and it might lose that emphasis that it has on a corner. And so, if possible, it'd be nice to kind of limit it in that 1/3 proportionality, as opposed to going to the midpoint and perhaps working the units in such a way, and maybe moving that drainage that's right behind it and reorienting the units, maybe one east-west, one north-south behind the wall to be able to achieve that. But I realize you're going to need some clearances around it. But that said, I believe that the overall building design is well thought out. The orientation of the building within the site fits quite nicely. The circulation works, both for the customers and the car storage. And I, again, like to kind of commend the fact that the building was moved farther north and provided that planner along the residential street, because although you didn't really, code doesn't really allow, dictate that, but at the same time, I think it's going to really break up that corner and create for a nicer prevailing setback as we venture into the residential area. So overall, I support the project.
Okay, Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with Mr. Simonian. I think this project has come a long way. A true improvement to the corner. I like the crispiness of the project. And, at the beginning, I was hesitant about the AC unit location still, but I can live with it as long as the frame of that tower is a part of the structure, not just a screen that ends up, dilapidated after a few years. The only criticism I have, I like the perspective. The west elevation, I think it needs something. I don't know if these canopies, and to my understanding from the plan, this is a wood frame structure. And the canopy with the supports, in my past experience, with that kind of overhang, you may need to add some bracing. I don't know how my colleagues feel, but the only suggestion I have is to put the turnbuckle wrought iron brace in that elevation. I think will give a little more
tension.
Right, and we'll give you a little more play on that elevation. You have such a wonderful theme going on, although each elevation has its own significant features, but I think that will add a little more to it. That's my personal opinion. Other than that, I will support the project. One other thing I may add is the planter next to the car wash. I think it's just shrubbery. I think maybe a tree is maybe a wise, to create a little more canopy in that area, a little shed. Other than that, I'm satisfied with what I see, and I'm hoping that we'll carry on what we see in the field for the crispiness of the perspective. I hope so. Thank you.
Maybe I missed it, but were the score lines or riglets? Were they?
Regular.
They were just-
Described as score lines.
Should we get
clarification?
Yeah.
Does the architect want to come up again, please? Just give your name and address for the record.
Sure.
I'm just not clear on these score lines.
Armin Kazanchian, address as well. 635 West Colorado. I'm the architect on the job. Are you talking about the scroll lines on the stucco?
Yes.
There'd be aluminum recesses.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay, that keep it crisp.
Much nicer.
Thank you. I agree with the comments. My only other comment is that I think the landscaping could be improved to tie in more with the architecture. A lot of the landscaping is drought tolerant, but this is going to be a nice, clean, crisp building, and I think that the landscaping could, like along the car wash, you've got a lot of shrubs that are going to get 10 feet wide in a 4-foot area and very messy. So something a little more crisp. And the tree locations on the Glendale Avenue side seem to be interfering with the existing street trees, so maybe those can be manipulated, moved around, because I think we have enough landscape area, but move them around so everything isn't crowded onto that sidewalk. But as far as the building goes, I think it's a much improved design, and I could support this.
One comment, Madam Chair, if you're finished. Jay mentioned that the second driveway will be maintained open.
Right.
Because currently the site has a gate, and that driveway on that side on Glendale Avenue has never been used. They're going to be on a daily operation.
I thought it was an open driveway.
It is a driveway, but I think there's a barrier there
I don't see a barrier here. You're talking about this driveway on Glendale?
on Glendale Avenue.
You might have to open it up for the architect because I don't think we've seen a gate there.
Was or some at one time there was?
Convention again. I believe Jay was referring to the roll-up gate towards the alley that
No.
we're going to be replacing, but there is no roll-up gate on the driveways.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a rolling gate on the alley side that's not allowed by code, so that's going to be replaced with block wall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any conditions?
We do.
Could you read those to us, please?
The board is, well, there's one we didn't get resolution on, which is the location of the reglet channels on the south facade, whether you prefer the elevation view where it's kind of regularly spaced. It does look in the rendering that the upper line, the spacing kind of moves up higher.
I prefer the rendering.
I prefer the rendering too.
Okay, so we'll put the control joints as drawn, as depicted on the rendering. We will look for different planting material in the car wash planter, which would be taller, crisper, and held closer to the wall. And then,
Let's review the plan in general to make it, the plantings tie in with the architecture.
okay, do you have any species recommendations? Or?
Not at the moment.
Okay,
I'll
so
come up with-
we'll-
I'll come up with something and slip it to you.
We'll look at we'll get pictures of whatever they're proposing and make
Yeah,
sure we
that would be
understand it. Also, that the trees on the Glendale Avenue planter are spaced so that they don't interfere with the street trees, or perhaps are relocated somewhere else on the site, so the number remains the same.
I think Mr. Mardian had a good point. Maybe put one over on the other side.
On the other
I
side.
have 3 on the other side, though, as I
I don't
recall.
have any trees between the car wash and the,
Well, there's really not a lot of room. There's only
there's about,
a couple feet, and it would be hanging over on the other side.
What we'll do is we'll try to retain, we'll definitely retain the number of trees on site,
Right, just-
and we'll make sure there's no interference in their inappropriate places. And then, I'm not sure if the board member Mardian thought that the canopy would benefit from having some tiebacks up to the wall. Is that a condition?
I think it's going to be a necessity at some point, and
Look
so.
good.
Yeah, I do think that was a staff recommendation to kind of keep the clean lines, to not have the turnbuckles, but
I like the clean lines, but I think structurally he may not be able to make it work
Especially with the wood frame.
with the wood frame.
okay, so we'll.
I mean, unless, Madam Chair, I think the architect wants to.
Please come up again.
Armin Kazanchin. We've got another one just like this that we've done, and it's engineered and it's in construction. So we were able, if you notice on the section, there's some beams that are floating through the space. They carry out on cantilever and carry that cantilever. So my preference would be not to put the 45-degree tiebacks. I think it's a cleaner look without it. So you can see it in both sections. There's 2 of them that extend out, and they're sort of Versalam beams that carry that canopy.
Those beams are not in the same line as the canopy, though.
The canopy box itself is larger, so the structure of those beams carries out, and then there's a framed box around it. So,
That's fine, we can make it work.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
we'll eliminate the tiebacks if the engineering allows. And then finally, the board prefers to see the tower or the enclosure surround the corner tower that encloses the HVAC to be the proportions as depicted, so the applicant should find a solution that will fit within proposed footprint of that area.
If they could limit it within that 1/3 of the building width,
Yeah,
it
I mean,
seems to
2 or
work
3
better.
feet is, fine
To
with
possibly
me.
extend it
Yeah,
a
2,
little
3
bit.
feet won't make a difference, but once you get into 8, you're almost going to the
yeah.
middle of the building, and it loses that
Maybe 2
fine
smaller
touch that it
units.
has.
Maybe 2 smaller units. Yeah.
Okay, so we have those 4 conditions.
We have a,
Oh, I'll move to approve the project with those conditions.
I'll second the motion.
All right, a motion was made to approve the project with conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Mr. Mardian?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
yes.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you.
Our next project is PDR 1211135, 1255 Corona Drive.
Thank you.
Leo?
Yes, board members, this case has been before you in the past on at least 2 occasions. The last occasion was March 3rd of 2011. This project may not look familiar to you, however, because at that time the board was comprised of different board members, and the one board member that was present at that meeting is absent today. So
Which board did it go to?
at the time it was board 2.
Say two.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll have to join it all the way. There we go. Thanks. So again, it may look like a new project to you, and the conditions that the board made, which I will go over to show how the comments were addressed, again, was obviously made by different board members. So I'll walk you through it. Basically, the project consists of it's an existing framed house. It's been basically, it's stopped construction since, I want to say, 2007. It's become a public nuisance. As a matter of fact, there's been police involvement as well. So that's why hopefully we come to some resolution today. Because again, it's been an ongoing issue for the neighbors and again for PD as well. So at the time the project was originally approved, it was for the development of a new 3-story house. And today's figures are a little lower than its original 2003 or so approval. Today it's 2,111 square feet. It's a 3-story single-family house, again, currently under construction. There are several active building permits. We are recommending approval with conditions. And briefly, the site is fronting 2 streets, both Corona and Palmer to the west. That's the street below. Let me show you briefly. Board. This is Corona, and then Palmer's down here. Let me pass around the photos, and that would help you visualize the neighborhood and the existing status of the frame building. That's the rear, and these are some pictures from the front, and then the neighborhood. So what I've done is I've pinned up the previous plans that were reviewed, which would consist of these elevations right in here, and then I try to set them side by side as best I could so that you can compare how the project has undergone its revision. What I'd like to do is, if you have any...
Interrupt
yes.
you for a minute? Is there plans that shows this image? Because this is totally different than what this is.
That would be this facade right in here.
There's a pitched roof, gable roof on...
Right.
This is the project as built.
Right.
Those plans are the projects that were reviewed by the board before, which was going to work from this.
So this was done without any approval?
No, it was. There are active building permits. That was the original design that was approved back in
So
2003.
this came in 2011? Or,
Correct.
okay.
So what happened was, again, it basically got put on hold. They stopped their permits. new owners have come on board, and this is Dr. Krosh is the new present owner of the property, who's owned the property now since, I believe, 2007. So he's basically redesigning it to his liking as the new owner. So again, these were the plans that were reviewed by the board a few years ago. This is the current proposal, based on the board's comments. So what I'd like to do, since we have several conditions, unless you have some questions regarding the site planning, mass scale, and design.
Yes, I have a question,
Sure.
Madam Chair. Were there any code compliance issues with the building
At the time, during plan check,
during, well, no, more like during construction, because it started. So were there any setback issues? Were there any kind of FAR issues or anything
not
like
at
that?
the time. The project went through a conditional use permit process. At that time, there was, I believe it was the slope
Maybe the width.
and the width of the front, correct? Because at the time that we required a CUP.
It was for lot size.
Right. Oh, for the lot size.
width.
Because it's less, so it would have needed a variance too. for
Variance,
lo-
right.
Yeah.
There
less
might have
than
been a variance as
7,500
well.
square feet, yeah.
Correct. I believe I have the entitlement highlighted in the report. I do mention that in 2003, there was a variance granted
Okay,
and also a CUP.
okay.
But during the plan check review process, I don't recall. I might have not been the actual plan checker at that time, but I don't recall. The only issue that we've had more recently has been the overall height, which I will go over in my presentation. Because they're changing, well, let me backtrack a little bit. At that time in 2003, the way we measured height was a little different. It was to the plate line. Nowadays, in today's current code, and for the past several years, we're measuring height from the overall building height from the lowest to the highest, to the top of the ridge. So essentially, based on this type of design with a flat roof, they're required to have a 32-foot height maximum. If they had a roof pitch of 3 and 12, then they could go up an additional 3 feet. But they are proposing to modify that hip roof, which before they were proposing. So they've decided to just strike that version and go with a completely more, the entire flat roof design is what they're proposing. So that, what you see there now will obviously, if ultimately this project's approved, with this design, then they are proposing a flat roof design, so that would be modified. And the other thing would be modified, as you can see, is this, you can see on this, on the south side here, is there's a hip roof as well that's being changed to look more like this. So they'd have to flatten that area, and they're proposing some sort of architectural treatment there as well.
And the 32 feet measure, if we're looking at it in elevation, if it's measured from the top of the roof, and where does it go down to?
Right there,
The lowest point where it comes out of the ground.
somewhere there's a time.
So if it comes out of the ground here, it would have to be taken from there. Wherever it is exposed. I don't know if that will require them having to play with the earth a little bit, depending on, because they have some retaining walls out there.
So do we have a survey with the grading, do we have a site plan that depicts the retaining walls and also?
I have this is the most recent site plan. I have the old site plan, which I didn't pin up. Those were the originals, because those walls were constructed per those original plans, if I recall.
Just bear with me for a moment. What about the building sections? Because in a hillside project, that's crucial. That would depict, from the street going down where the retaining walls are and
I
how-
have the old ones, but not for this current proposal, because they were not proposing to change that. The only changes really is for this project is basically just been the proposal to just redo the facade. They're not proposing to change any of the existing site walls or retaining walls that were originally,
stays.
correct, that were originally approved and gone through the plan check process and were constructed.
Well, problem comes in without the section is really trying to understand what the old codes, which was 35 feet to the top of plate, the new codes, which is 32 feet to the top of the roof. And all of a sudden, there's a big difference there. And so that delta really, when you work down from the roof and you go down, it's where the building meets the site and what kind of retaining walls you have to do to get that to work. So that's what it's hard to grasp it without those drawings.
And as a zoning question, we'll make sure that it meets code as we go through the process. And I believe we already have on the drawing showing that it does. And if it had...
We'll have to, carefully look at it during the plan check process. The applicant is fully aware of this issue. So like I said, if it requires them having to play with the earth a little bit to make sure that whatever's exposed, that's where the overall height begins, then that's what they'll need to do.
I believe the maximum height of retaining walls is 5 feet exposed at the bottom.
Correct.
So you have a height problem, you kind of have to start way at the bottom and put in your walls and then go to 2 to 1 and then keep on going to the point where you could make that 32 feet work from that last piece over to the top of the roof.
Are you referring to retaining walls that are below the structure? Because there's some that are detached.
Since the drawings were in here,
Okay.
It's hard to
Lower the roof.
Yeah, partly because of
Let's go through it.
the complexity of this project, all of this has already been approved, and the height, taking the roof off, meeting the 32-foot height limit. If they had to bring down the plate height on the top floor a little more, that would also be a possibility to bring the height down, as well as through earthworks at the bottom of the house.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is kind of just go over the conditions that the board made at the last hearing or meeting in 2011, which was number 1, to reduce the amount of railing and balcony area, provide a variety in the railing in order to break up the mass and the continuity. So based on the current proposal, it does show less railing on the building. And, for example, the west, which is the rear elevation, does include several breaks in the facade where the railing is interrupted, whereas before it was just continuous all the way around. In addition, the use of railing on the south elevation has also been reduced. Number 2, introduce different forms and volumes and design elements for better visual interest and overall design treatment, or improvement rather. So the revised design does include various forms. As we can see, there's more recesses at different levels, especially again at the rear facade. The design includes a combination of materials. They're combining stucco and then vertical metal panel siding. So the stucco is proposed, which is the darker gray on the lower floor, as you can see on the west facade, and then the upper floor is the metal panel siding, which with a lighter gray combination to further accentuate the forms and recesses. The hip roof design, again at the garage, was modified, which is what I alluded to earlier, and it's been modified to a flat roof, which is more consistent and integrates better with the proposed flat roof design of the house. Number 3 was to introduce additional trellis structures in other areas where appropriate. For example, at the mid-level push-in on the west side, introduce a trellis structure over the deck. The recessed areas at the west elevation do not include a trellis structure. The applicant basically has determined that the revisions, in his opinion, the revisions that they're proposing to the mass and the use of material is appropriate and articulates the facade without the need of having to introduce that additional feature. The open deck, however, which I mentioned earlier, just to the left of the entry as you're looking at the front facade, that open deck area at the front of the house includes posts and railing and an awning support, which appear to, again, support a new retractable awning, but we don't have information on this particular treatment or feature, so we would have to confirm the appearance of what this is going to look like. Number 4 was to explore two-story elements as a way of breaking up the horizontality of the building. So two-story elements are not introduced as part of this latest revision. Again, the applicant has determined that it would not enhance the design. Perhaps he can further explain why this why two-story elements wouldn't be appropriate. Number 5, to verify the overall height, we just discussed that. According to the plan, they're proposing the 32 feet, which would comply with code. Number 6 was to consider interrupting the band in order to reduce its consistent wrapping for greater impact. So the wood-like fascia band has not, well, actually at the time it was a wood-like fascia band, so there was a revision that was made. Actually, wait, I just remembered something. The wood-like fascia that was originally introduced was interrupted. And what they've done now is they've also reduced the height. Staff recommends interrupting the band in a logical location in order to create a two-story volume. What they did was at the time when the original was a wood fascia band, these recent plans, I've received several iterations, so this is a typo, the wood-like fascia, because no longer is it a wood-like fascia, it's now a metal fascia.
And one of the other things that addresses that, the horizontality concern, is that we now have the fascia band that runs horizontally, but the metal panel joints are now vertical. So the kind of relentless horizontality of the original design is part of the new proposal. And we thought that helped address that comment, or that condition.
Condition number 8 was that the existing structure does not appear compatible with the existing design. Again, the board at the time had concerns regarding compatibility, and so they wanted to see more flexibility with the openings, opening some, closing others. So some of the existing openings have been modified, and I listed them as far as, for example, the sliding glass doors on the northwest facade have been changed to single-door openings. The height of some of the doors on the second floor have been slightly increased. New windows are incorporated on the topmost floor of the north elevation. They have a clear-story window above the front entry, and new window was added on the staircase, and a new sliding door and single door added to the south elevation.
Okay. You skipped 7.
Oh, I skipped number 7. So let's go back. Consider introducing roof levels and/or different types of roofs. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, they did modify the hip roof design above the garage. They made that a flat roof design, which again integrates better with the overall flat roof of the house that they're proposing. 9, if functions or if aspects of the function of the or interior design were better reflected on the exterior, it would provide more variety and architectural interest. Based on what I saw, no significant modifications have been made to the floor area, with the exception of the master bedroom. It did appear a little larger. Based on the revised plans, it appears that the size of the master bedroom actually a little on the lower bedroom on the lower floor was enlarged. The revised design includes changes to the rear elevation at the second floor, and some of the balconies appear to have been reduced in size. And again, the amount of railing was interrupted. 10 was that the applicant to review successful hillside projects, and the applicant has advised that he has done that homework, which again translated into what he's proposing today. Number 11 was to modify the front entrance, and they have done that. They've lowered it by approximately 2.5 feet compared to the previous design. Item 12 was to remove the design feature located above the front facade next to the entry, and what they've done, and I mentioned this earlier, it looks, based on what we've seen, they've included posts which connect to a retractable awning, perhaps, in this open deck area, but we don't have enough information to confirm that. Number 13 was to incorporate a variety of materials and finishes to alleviate the homogeneity of materials, thereby reducing the perceived mass and scale of the building. So I've mentioned earlier that the new design does include a variety of more finishes and color combination, the combination of the light gray, dark gray, vertical siding, and the stucco. And the fascia is the horizontal metal band that they're proposing. Number 14, introduce more fenestration and find a pattern which reinforces the design on the north and south elevations. And so they've done that. They've added additional windows and glass doors. into these elevations. Number 15, vary the fenestration on the west elevation. Once again, they've addressed that as well. They have included a variation in window and the way the windows operate. And number 16, a 3D perspective of the rear was submitted. And number 17 was to consider submitting a model. I have not received a model. I don't know if a model was brought today to the meeting. I guess it has not. So that was a consideration, not a requirement. And with the last two items is staff comments or conditions. Provide a subtle color contrast for the fascia. So because right now it just seems to be too
Do we have a
close
color or
in color.
material board?
Yes, I do, right here. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. And number 2 was to provide more information regarding the retractable awning. That concludes my presentation.
Sure, I had a question.
Yes.
I'm having a little trouble understanding the floor plan versus the perspective in the rear elevation. If you look at the floor plans, there's small balconies in the center deck, but on the perspective, it's a continuous deck that runs on that lower or mid-level. Seems like the floor plan doesn't match the elevations.
Maybe we can get that, call the architect it.
Okay.
Oh, wait, do you have any other questions?
Do we have a plan of the ground level, the garage level? Do we have a floor plan of that?
I'll look through the old, but not a new one.
Do we have a landscape plan?
We have the old, because they're not proposing to change that.
Is that in the packet?
No, I'm going to put it up on the board. This was the original garage floor plan. And since you earlier you mentioned cross sections, I'll pin this old one up. Maybe it could shed some light. And this is the old, originally approved landscape plan. I didn't write this note, so I don't know what took place there.
Board Member Marty, and you're totally right about the floor plan and the rendering, but if you look at drawing PL4, which is actually a roof plan, but
And that's correct.
that actually shows, yeah.
Which way is north? Because the site plan doesn't show it.
It's on the-
Okay, so north would be this way, this would be south, and here's the west and the east. So it'd be, to the right of the garage would be north.
And there seems to be some sort of a slab area that's created at the bottom of the site. Do we know what that is? If you look at
To
the
the right
site
of the
plan.
drive?
Which area are you referring to? I'm sorry?
You can rotate that.
There you go.
Excuse me, Jay. Can you rotate
It's,
that, Palmer?
Sure.
This, do we know what that is? Because it's a finished slab. And so is this new, or is this proposed or existing?
look
I'd have to defer to
uphill.
the owner.
Yeah.
And then do we
See
know
if I can
what,
do
are
that.
these power lines running there, or
I-
just an easement?
I
could get you the
believe-
aerial
Well,
view.
it is a utility easement, but I believe they're overhead. He will have a, he can explain that better.
Any other questions?
No?
Okay, with that, I'm going to call up Manzar Karashi. Please give us your name and address.
Yes, it's Manzur Karashi, address presently is 2701 West Alameda, Burbank, California, 91505. And thank you for the opportunity to present my home. Just to give you another brief little history, I'm the third owner of this home under construction for the last 11 years, and I wanted to build something that was a little more architecturally interesting than the original structure, which was a very conventional stucco and sloped roof home. There's no structural changes from the original plan. We just, other than a roof line alteration and facade and material combination changes, they were all used to make a more contemporary presentation. I've worked extensively with your staff to address all of the previous DRB conditions, recommendations, and concerns, and I understand your difficulty in looking at the evolution of this project. It's not an easy thing to do. But I hope I've come up with a design that you like and can approve. I just want to let you know that it's kind of critical to get approval at this point, because otherwise the city is going to comply me to finish the structure as originally proposed. And I wanted to build something for our community that was a little more architecturally interesting. And the DRB staff has proposed 2 conditions, which I have no objection to whatsoever. And if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer them.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have new sections for the new design that clearly depict, similar to, say, this section, that clearly depict the contour of the property, where your retaining wall is, where your height would begin at, where it goes to 32 feet, and what the height of those retaining walls are, and what is happening with that slab at the bottom? Do we have any?
We don't have new plans because there's no changes from the original. Everything is as existing, and it's going to remain the same in compliance.
I understand, but the codes have changed, so I'm asking, do you have any site sections which have been drawn?
No new ones, because it's in compliance with both the old and the new codes.
And what is that flat slab area at the bottom?
It's just a hill for now. I think they proposed it as either a grassy or some kind of a recreational area for the backyard, because there is no backyard.
Are you the owner or the designer?
A little bit of both.
Okay. Has a licensed architect worked on these drawings?
Yes, Barry Cameron Stroh.
Because over in our site plan, it says finished slab. It says FS over this area.
Yeah.
Which means FS typically stands for finished slab.
So that's what we'll propose to complete as per the original plans.
And, well, long story short, these are all the drawings that you have?
Yes.
Okay.
And staff has verified that it meets the 32-foot height limit.
According to the plan.
According
According to this plan. If you look at the west facade, that would be the lowest point. If I recall, the lowest point should be the southwest corner.
Are we looking at this one?
No, this one right here. I believe this is the lowest corner of the property, if I recall.
It's
you
actually
can
the
approach
opposite.
the board.
It's the opposite. May I approach the?
Sure.
I remember you mentioning you dropped a line, so.
Actual ground to.
Pointer?
Thank you.
That might help.
Yeah, measurements are, on this side, the actual measurement is only 27 feet, and on this side, it's 32 feet. Actually, 31 foot 6 inches.
Okay, so how would that 32 feet work on that section?
Is from,
Well, from here, assuming, because you're not changing this.
correct.
Right? Okay.
Yes. So it's from the very top of that to the very, to the bottom of the stem wall on the other side. This section shows the north side of the house, because it's the master bedroom, and it would be on the opposite side of the structure.
Would it be this
It's the
area?
garage area. That's the garage section, right through.
No, it'd be this area down here.
Well, this one is the garage section.
Oh, sorry,
right
wait a
here.
second.
This is the garage. Is this what it exists? I mean, these?
Yes, yes, that's what exists.
And the same thing there?
Yes, it's already built.
I don't see it there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think you're pointing to the same items I'm pointing to. It's just confusion with the drawings and trying to orient oneself.
No, if I might add, since the building is already built, and we know what the building looks like with this peaked roof, and it's going to be a shorter building than it is, if staff will ultimately be verifying that 32 feet height is the correct measurement, if the board could focus more on the design aspect of it, if you think that the height issue is causing a design problem. But in terms of zoning, meeting the zoning requirements, it's ultimately the responsibility of staff to ensure that that's accurate. And since we have a built building, we have the rare opportunity to really visualize the mass and scale in the flesh.
I guess where we're just coming from is, did he draw something with the new design that indicated that, or just chop the roof down to meet that 32 feet?
Well, whether it's whatever the scenario, and there's the requirements for the package that we need.
I understand this is just such an unusual situation.
And if it's built, it should be easier to document drawings because the building's there, so it's easier to do actual sections, elevations, floor plans, site plans, indicating where existing retaining walls are, which ones are going to be removed, which ones are going to be replaced, where the flat slab is, how that's going to work, how the setbacks from the power utility lines, if any, occur. It actually should be easier to document it, and so we're just trying to get our arms around it, and this is one of those hillside cases where there's more questions than answers. But I guess while the architect's here, or the owner, designer...
There's no changes from the original, so it's in compliance with all the previous...
Where are the utility lines relative to the house? They show 8 feet shorter than the roof.
Yes, they probably are. You can see them from the top level.
But they're not up against...
There's some distance, maybe 10, 12 feet away from the back of the house. I think it shows an easement on that site.
It shows along the side, not the back.
Let's see if we can get...
There's a plumbing easement on the side, and there's a utility easement at the back. But if anything, we're going to be pulling away from that easement.
On the south side.
You can see the lines here. There's a power pole between the properties, and then it's running...
It shows 8 feet lower, and it's right next to the building. So my question is whether that side, on the left side, do those utility lines come up close to the building?
Just at the property line. No, they're maybe 10, 15 feet away from the building.
It shows you don't have 10, 15.
No, I mean, visually, I'm saying, because the building goes back with each level.
Okay.
And so I think, they're probably from the top level.
I'm looking at the lower levels.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
I had another question, sir, for you. The side garage walls. I noticed you're calling them out as metal panels, so that is not a retaining wall, that is not a backfill, so the driveway just bridges over to the garage?
Yes, it just bridges.
But the previous plan called out retaining walls on the side.
They're not built yet.
So are you going to build those walls? Or
Yeah,
is it going
just
to be
whatever is proposed.
crawl space?
Yeah, we will build it as proposed, yes.
If it's a fill space, they wouldn't be retaining walls, or they would just be clad per code. You can't have an open bridge underside.
But the lower left elevation / section shows a bridge kind of a scenario.
Bridge,
it doesn't show, stem walls on the side where it's filled, in which case the apron and driveway would actually be on fill. Because, if you already have built structures and then you're trying to create a bridge, that the driveway is going to sit on a bearing wall, and that bearing wall, if it's existing, should support it. And if it's not existing, then stem walls need to come in.
Okay.
There's two large pylons built to complete the driveway. It was built by the same builder as the next property. I don't know if you can look at it. The driveway sits on two large pylons with a concrete.
While I'm here, I just found the view from Palmer below. And then I'll try to bring us back up to the... is useful for you now?
View for 1 second.
Those are your walls you were talking about.
Yeah, can we zoom in if possible?
We don't have the new version. Maybe we can, yeah.
Okay. And so, these are existing retaining walls. All that is retained, which is similar to this.
does look like there'd be an opportunity to build a 5-foot retaining wall somewhere along here and build up a 2-to-1 slope to adjust the height of, or the point where it emerges from the earth if needed. But the applicant does testify that he dropped a line and verified the heights physically.
Then the question becomes if that existing retaining wall that's there will be able to support the backfill upon compaction.
It's already done.
Well, no, but you could have a wall that's been designed to have dirt against it, or you could have a wall that's not designed to have dirt against it, but to support a building. So the placement of the rebars within the concrete wall or the block wall determines that. Whether it's the metals on the outside or on the inside determines which side is in tension, which side is in compression, and how the wall would react when the earth's against it.
But I think it's been designed and completed the way the original plans were. So
correct, but with the new codes, you would have to put dirt against it. That's what we're discussing.
Yeah, I think so. In terms of structural code, I think Mr. Comer is allowing us to, since he's keeping the old building permits open, is allowing us to comply to the code that was approved with the original permits.
So the building permit is not expired?
No.
No.
You're a lucky man.
Yes, and that's why we're here today.
So why are we going off of the 32-foot? Why aren't we going off of the old?
But that's a
Right.
building code.
The building department
Yeah.
can't extend the zoning codes. So
Exactly.
they allowed the building permit to remain open.
For that project. But now he's, again, coming in with a totally different design, so we have to have him comply with today's zoning code.
Which we believe he is.
But not today's building code.
Right.
Not so much concerned with all the zoning issues, because I'm sure you guys are going to check that. But I'm concerned the floor plan matching the elevations what's presented today, which is our duty for that today. So how could I be assured that the rendering works with the floor plan?
We will work very carefully with the applicant. We do have on that roof plan the actual, what appears to be the footprint that
I'm
depicts.
talking square footage, footprints, and things like that, because, because I'm going to ignore this plan. This one, I think we should ignore whatever it was, because it was return design. So we should really compare the new one with what's out here today. I mean, what has been built. And I have no problem in supporting the project. I don't know if we're there yet, but I need to see correct plans or you will verify these plans that match, and whatever is presented in the perspective, if everybody agrees, that works.
Well, we're comfortable that the applicant is working with the existing layout. The walls are not changing. The square footage will be the same as what was built, which we believe is what was approved originally and meets code. One of the big issues in terms of your original review and what we've been looking at when we've been working with Dr. Qureshi is to kind of meet the conditions that were set in terms of the overall appearance and how did the facades articulate, how do the balconies and decks work. But
May I approach the plans?
I shouldn't actually say that the house is exactly the same as what was built, because I don't know that for a fact. So
Mardian, is this,
it doesn't look like it looking at the drawings.
Thank you. Is this the area that
That I'm talking, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where there exists a sloping roof right now, and the sloping roof is.
Yeah, but that's not what your floor plan calls out for right now. Look at your floor plans.
This
There's
one
no
here?
balcony, continuous balcony. There's all these jogs that individual balconies that occur are not depicted on the rendering.
Oh,
It's correct. It's maybe closer for the elevation. The elevation is interpreted
right.
better than the floor plan.
You know, I guess what there is here is that roof
Yes,
that jogs out, and
right,
that
right.
roof converts into this. So I don't
Right.
know which is.
That's where
Yeah.
there's the old roof line.
Yeah.
The old roof line,
It's the old roof line. So I see what you mean.
Remove.
That this doesn't match that.
That doesn't match that.
Yeah, I think this is
balcony is-
taken from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that.
So since you're up there, that footprint in the bottom, the gray, where you're changing the texture.
This one?
Back to the, yeah. No, go back to the rendering.
This one?
That hasn't changed, that bottom,
No.
the bottom wall.
Yeah, actually, none of the walls have changed.
Okay, none of them, okay.
None of them changed. I guess there's going to be no changes to the structure of the house at all.
What do these metal panels look like?
They're flat metal panels with, they're what they call structural insulated steel panels with have insulation value to them, and they have a flat surface with a raised seam at each junction, but a narrow seam.
That's going to be applied on the driveway walls?
Yes, anything above
masonry.
above the main level.
No, on the driveway side walls. You see going back to the north elevation? See the north elevation?
On the bottom.
On the bottom.
Where the,
Middle.
North one, yes. Yeah, on this thing, yes.
So that's going to be on masonry?
I think that's it, because it calls for some kind of a completion wall, so there's no empty space there. Okay.
What's the driveway material?
I think it's concrete with scored and exposed
Okay,
aggregate.
so that should be called out.
Yeah. Where are your AC units?
AC units are going to sit here behind
The setback area?
Yeah, in the setback area. This side of the house, and the two sides of the house, especially this side, is not really visible from anywhere. Because the next house is only 6 feet away, so.
And where are your pumps going to go? Your sewer and dewatering pumps, or are you going down to?
Yeah, the sewer, it's already connected to Palmer, down below.
How does the roof strain?
The roof drain, I think he has it pitched. It's going to have it's connected to a perimeter drain system around the entire house. The whole house has
It goes down interior-wise?
It goes interior-wise around the perimeter of the house, and it's got a separate drain line that goes down to Palmer.
So there's no external downspouts?
No.
Other questions while he's up here? Thank you.
Actually, if I could point out something that you may have questions for Dr. Qureshi. Looking at the as-built elevation from Palmer, the lower two floors proportionally look more or less like what we see in the rendering and in some of the drawings. I am questioning, however, at the garage level, at the top floor, where we see this projection to the right here, which we don't see on the drawings.
That's correct. Yeah.
So I'd like to ask if that's going to be demolished or if that's going to be built out and extended.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Right now, they have the HVAC unit sitting in the roof that's going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so to house that HVAC unit, the architect brought that straight up rather than jog it back and go here. So this becomes a little mechanical room. Right now, it's sitting in the existing roof.
So you are building, you're extending the wall.
Yeah, this wall is, rather than being a roof, has to complete the wall to house that unit. Otherwise, it would be like a half-height structure.
And what kind of HVAC are you putting there?
That's the internal unit for the internal
blower?
forced air blower and all that stuff. Yeah, the furnace sits right in this space right here.
Is it a split system where?
So far, he just has a single system.
The question I have is, if you look at the photograph, you have the roof line, this running parallel to the rear facade. You have a return,
Right.
And then you have another extension here that I don't see on your drawings.
The extension is
filled in.
It's
That
filled
whole
in,
corner
yes.
is filled in.
Yes.
But that's a pretty big corner. That's
Corner,
a long.
Room.
Yeah, it's room sized.
Yeah, but it's because the angle of the photo is such that this thing is, it's the same angle as the slope, and that's right where the mechanical unit sits in there.
That's the same width as your entry.
It's like 6 or 8 feet, something like that. But the unit takes up the whole space in there. So he's just, that's just going to be the framer, how to put some framing around it. I mean, we can create that jog still, as long as the unit fits.
Even in the aerial, it is a considerable amount of square footage. We unfortunately have been representing to the board that you are not adding any square footage, and it looks like you actually are.
But
So when we get the new drawings, we'll just have to verify that you haven't gone over FAR or any
Oh,
other.
okay. Is that considered, it's because it's attic space?
It's not attic space.
No. Or you could find another location for your equipment.
Yes,
and
yeah,
leave
that's
it-
for-
leave
that's-
it as built.
That's perfect, yes, we can do that. Either proposal is fine.
Do we have any other questions?
No?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with any
Thank you.
suggestions to complete the project. Thank you very much.
Close the public session. Mr. Mr. Mardia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like I've said, I mean, I'm sure staff is capable of resolving the zoning issues on this. My concern is that the plans that, prior of submittal to plan check, I need, staff needs to confirm accurate plans that depicts the perspectives that are shown. And I like to see that the area brought back. I think it creates a little more break into the building. As Jay pointed out, that corner piece is filled in. I like to see that back again.
As built?
As built, right. And I want to make sure that these walls on the side walls are not just the metal panels that eventually will. I don't want to. It's built. We're not going to recreate another design. It's obviously this was approved, and we are, based on your testimony and applicants said that the footprints hasn't changed, and I want to respect that.
At the ground level, at least.
Yeah. And I hope they can finish this project. I'll support it unless if my colleagues convince me otherwise. I'm hesitant to approve projects where the floor plans don't match the plan, but I rely on staff to do that, because we don't want to have something else come up during construction.
Mr. Simonian?
Well, it's a difficult scenario because there's a built house, and anytime you have a built structure and you're trying to add to it or even finish it, even as is, even if nothing changes in the design, if it's been staying dormant for some time, it's still a huge challenge to finish it, because sometimes even if your entitlements are good and they are still, say, valid, then you have building codes that change even if so, if the design has stayed the same, even if the building codes change, you still have a big challenge ahead of you. In this scenario, we have really both of those happening, which makes it more complicated. These drawings kind of remind me of that one hillside project that came back about 4 times. and where we were just having
which one?
Where we were just having a lot of trouble understanding it. Overall, the direction of the design, I don't particularly have an issue with, and it it is terraced, and it is doing. It has certain attributes that are in line with the hillside design guidelines. So overall, the materials, the colors, the railings, all that, which are the specific components of the design, work, and I'm confident that those will get resolved. What troubles me is the fact that it's very difficult to review a project like this where the drawings are incomplete, and you have 3 of us having a hard time. So I could only imagine what staff's going through, trying to sort these things out between the old and the new and whatnot. It is complicated. We could simplify the matter. Whatever the scenario is, if it's coming in front of us, it should have the components that the design review board typically expects from all the other projects, which is site plan and floor plans and elevations and sections and renderings that match. And so in this scenario, it's very hard for me, almost impossible for me to understand the building and its orientation and how it's nestled into the hillside without that information, especially the retaining walls, how grade is affected, whether you need to add a new retaining wall at the bottom to support the dirt and how that's going to work, if you're going to be able to put new piles in there, or you're hand digging them, or whatever the case might be, or you're going to have enough room to put them in there. All those are items that, need to be worked out to be able to at least assess the design. So, although I'm in favor of the general direction of the design, general language of the materials, and overall, the design approach that they've taken to make it work, there are a lot of shortfalls in the drawings which make it hard for me to really assess it. And so my preference would be that whether it comes back front of us, which is what I'm leaning more towards, or even staff reviews it, these drawings have to be updated. They just, either way, it needs to get done. And proper sections need to be drawn, and because when we're looking at this, we have a large wall as depicted in the actual picture, and then we have elevations that are showing, basically grade right here with flowers coming out and with planting coming out. So, that wall's actually here, and when that wall's here, there's a lot going on that is not depicted here, and so it's difficult to assess it. So those are my thoughts.
You're saying the building is higher?
Well, I'm just saying that
Would look higher.
what typically we have a site plan, and it's very easy to understand where the retaining walls are, what the heights of the retaining wall is, what the top of wall is, what the bottom of wall is, and where the 32 feet is measured from. Now,
And that area is not landscaped at this point either.
yeah,
So.
and so we have so it just doesn't have the updated landscape drawing, updated grading plans.
Here's a clarity for you. I'm assuming that window, that's my sliding door, or was before or not?
That's going to be this.
Yeah, that's going to be that.
Correct.
So there's a substantial,
And then
That's what
there's
I'm pointing at.
whether or not that roof change, makes it work, I'm not sure.
Right. And so he's going to have to, I would imagine, if we're truly trying to adhere to the 32 feet, he's got to start building up walls and then doing 2-to-1 slope to get that to a point to start doing this 32 feet. In which case he's putting dirt against that, maybe or maybe not. I don't know.
So Art, he's saying at the top, this portion right here, from here to the top is 32, not from here.
It's not so much that I'm debating whether the 32 feet. I'm sure staff could figure that out. I'm not really pointing at that. My concern is really having a set with a lack of drawings coming in front of us. That's really the biggest issue. Because we just spend a lot of energy trying to understand it, and I think if some of those drawings were there, it's easier for me
No,
to
but
understand.
now I'm more confused because you stated this was the 32 feet, or whether either side. Now that drawing, that picture depicts that wall down here.
That's what I'm trying to point.
So that's at least
Well,
5 feet.
my 32 is in here somewhere.
Right, but that,
So the wall is somewhere,
it's down
the grade is somewhere.
about 5 feet.
With the presumption that we're going to be adding at least a couple of retaining walls, if the board would like to give us direction in terms of what you'd like to see on those walls. Part of the, and forgive us, this has been an extremely complicated project on our end and on the end of building and safety. We're at the point where we kind of have to move forward now that we have an attractive nuisance on the site, and so we're not just running against our own deadlines and rules, but also the police are now involved. We don't want to put the board under pressure, but we are all under pressure on this project. So if recognizing, and it's clear looking at this photo that elevation is not accurately drawn, it does seem that within the constraints of the zoning code, through a series of retaining walls, we'll be able to get the height to meet the zoning code based on our rules. And And we hate to ask you to presume something's going to happen, but if you give us solid direction, we can make sure it happens.
I'd like to ask the applicant to come back up and answer a few questions. Maybe we can move on with that. What's your name and address?
Manzur Eskarashi, 2701 West Alameda, Burbank, California. Just one comment.
Sure.
That wall you're looking at there is not the bottom of the structure. That's a retaining wall that sits in front of the house. That's what the confusion is.
So it's not tied to the house?
It's not attached. That's a retaining wall that sits in front of the house.
You can sort of see right here, there is a
that the wall that
return.
is being erased here? Is that the wall up here? It's somewhere in here? Is that the wall here?
Yes, it's away from the structure.
So there's like a deck area at the corner
Right.
that stops a little somewhere in here. See, it's shown in here. It's just been erased. I mean, there's a retaining wall that comes through here and stops
Correct.
in here.
That's what we're looking at?
That's what we're looking
That's
at.
what you're looking at. So the actual grade is that masonry, that's 3-4 feet of masonry there that you see. So this is what you're seeing, sorry. This is what you're seeing. I think they're within that 32.
Well, nevertheless, this wall where you see the wood cladding is
Can we read?
significantly higher than what's shown on the elevation.
That's correct, yeah.
And
That's
so
the other
we'll-
part.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to figure that out.
I suggest maybe we condition it with a, surveyor verifies the height.
While you're still up here, I'm looking at your material board. You have the fascia as this bamboo.
Yes, so that was an error.
And what's drawn on the plan, that's going to change the way it looks because this looks like the metal.
It is. It just wasn't changed on the board.
So it's metal and,
It's metal, correct. That's what
What is metal?
Milka was mentioning too.
well, the fascia was going to be this, but now it's the metal.
The previous DRB didn't like the horizontality of the fascia and the lines and grooves that we're showing. So we removed that by, that was one of the comments that Milka made. So we removed that by making it a metal one. And they suggested we make a slightly different color than the other siding, which is, all of that is acceptable.
Were you involved with the project when it went to DRB last time?
I was, yes. I owned the project then, yeah.
I see.
But it was a totally different project. I actually enlisted the architectural professors at CSUN to design it, and they designed a very modern horizontal structure, which the design review board didn't like at all. And so we took all of their 17 recommendations into consideration and just worked through this.
This was the project on the right is what was designed by the CSUN
It was
group?
one iteration before. There's
Oh.
been about 7 iterations of this altogether.
At least.
Yeah, at least, yes.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
You're done?
I am done.
Well, I won't belabor this anymore. I agree with all the comments, and I do think we need, if staff can get all the drawings together, I think we need a new landscape plan because it doesn't reflect that flat area, and doesn't have anything in the front, so we need a landscape plan that reflects what the new proposed design is doing for the entire site. And I'm just as confused as everybody else, so I won't, if staff can,
Been quite a challenge.
I'm sure.
And the last application that came in was in 2012, and these just came in recently. So, like I said, we have had to push this project fast because of, again, our recent issues with.
We go over our comments and
Sure.
see where we stand.
Before you do that, what's the time frame that they have right now? Is it something, because Mr. Simonian brings out a lot of good points and everybody else did, and we want to make sure the plans match, but is there any way this could be continued and those information could be supplied to us?
It's last call, pretty much. You do have the option of return for redesign, which we would have to accept.
No, but what is the timing of,
With the building department?
The building.
yeah, whatever the fire drill is that you're referring to, what is the timing of it?
Well, as a matter of fact, I just spoke to the inspector today to inform him that we're having the meeting. If the project isn't approved today, they most likely will have to expire that building permit. It's been ongoing for too long.
It's a very unusual
Let's assume
situation to
we
keep it
push
alive
this
this long,
through.
as you
Let's assume we
know.
push this through. They still have to go to plan check. That's going to take time. So they're not getting a building permit after we get an approval. I mean,
No,
today's approval.
but if they get an approval, then at least
Gives
they
them-
continue to move on. If it's returned for redesign, it just
And
stops
if we
again.
approved it with conditions today, they still have to come back with all that information.
Right.
Is there a
For
time
the
limit?
I
plan check.
don't, we'll have to work with him and the inspector to create a time limit.
Like yesterday.
Yeah, but how is he going to provide the information that we're requesting, and also Mr. Simonian is requesting, that, he cleans this drawing up, gives you a fresh drawing? That's going to take, however fast, a couple of weeks to do it, until they see you again, see if we met all the conditions that we've set. Now,
Talking a couple months.
yeah,
Which would be expanded by another couple of months if we had to go through return for redesign, reschedule, new application, all of
But why
that.
would it be returned for redesign? Why couldn't we just continue it to get the information that we're asking for
Oh.
to a date certain?
We-
That
Could.
is a
We could do that.
possibility. Given that we have a little bit of pressure on us, one of the things that's different about this, ordinarily we wouldn't bring a project like this to the board with such confusion, or we would try not to. We do have a built building, which gives you some assurance that the overall mass, the scale, the relationship to the neighborhood, you're able to visualize that in a better way than we often are with a proposal that hasn't been built. And the issue here is ultimately, how is the applicant going to make this meet code? We're going to see a few retaining walls, probably at least one. We're going to see some earthworks changes. We'll be having some landscape changes because of that. But the board does seem happy with the overall design approach, the materials. We can see what the mass and scale look like. The site plan isn't going to significantly change except for the retaining walls. So I just want to put that out there, as I'm very comfortable that at staff we can make sure the drawings are coordinated, we can get the direction that you want. We've heard where the weak points are, obviously. So that's our offer is we'll make sure it happens. But if you do want to continue it, obviously that's the board's decision. So.
Can I ask a question? If it were if we did, or the board approve with conditions, can we put a date in the conditions? So a date meaning by such and such day you have to come in with your plans for stamp to go into plan check. So it doesn't linger for another several months, is my question.
We
Yeah,
would put
because if
dates
you-
on other
if
conditions.
we're on the line to approve this, and I think the applicant should be on the same, page with us, that this needs to be done rather quickly. I mean, because it still has to go through, I don't think this is an over-the-counter situation. They still have to submit it for a plan
Right.
check. For a plan check, you're talking 6 weeks, 4 weeks.
Because if we were to continue it, it would be a date certain, maybe 2 weeks, maximum 4 weeks, right, that we would give them to get us the information. So in which case, they would have to get it done and come back within that period. And so, yeah,
I think we would understand it a lot better.
we would, but at the same time, I think if staff's going to do it, there should be that kind of time frame as well. Those are my thoughts on the timing, at least.
Let me ask another thing.
It's the board's
So
decision.
If we approve this today, and we say, okay, he needs to come up with correct drawings and all that, you won't give him the stamp based on he needs to submit you a full set of drawing that you understand before you stamp it.
Yes, and because not only is we're going to
Because I don't want
have to deal with that during plan check,
check.
that would be a condition.
Half of them are met and half of them are not met, and I want to make sure the plan is correct,
Yeah, because, you have a complicated scenario, and then you have an owner presenting it. No offense, he did a wonderful job, but it's complicated. And so anytime an architect isn't here presenting, that tells me something is happening why isn't he here? And if he were to be here, it would be a lot easier to explain it. And if he were to be here, it's much easier for him to say, yeah, you know what, we'll get this done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And we open it up all the time where the architect comes up and we'll ask him or her, how long do you think it'll take? And that person will say, oh, it'll take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and that's exactly, then we have a clear time frame to do it. So it's difficult, but I would, minimum 2 weeks it's going to take.
It's gonna take
If
a couple-
not a month, I would say, to really dial this thing in.
I've just been informed that the architect recently 3 weeks ago, had a massive heart attack, is no longer in business,
Because of
which suggests that whatever time frame we're talking about is,
So
it just gets richer and richer. So
you just throw a curveball on it.
I leave it to the board. We have
Well-
to leave it to the board.
How does, question, Madam Chair, if you think, go ahead.
I'm comfortable with staff getting all the information and go, I mean, we've all expressed our concerns, and they've been dealing with this project. So if they get all the information in a time-sensitive way and go over it, and it appears to answer all the questions, I'd be comfortable with that, based on all the other problems that...
As with any other approval with conditions, if we didn't get something we were comfortable with, we bring it back to the board.
Yeah. May I make a suggestion, actually?
Sure.
Well, it's more directed to the ownership. I think it's to your benefit to really go get a professional architect that is available right now and has capacity to take this on, and to really spend the time and efforts that's required to get these drawings dialed in, or you're just going to spend a lot of time and money and efforts during construction that's going to go wasted. These things, if they're not thought out now, will cost 3 to 10 times more later to fix. So the design fees that you're going to spend now, you're going to save tenfolds during construction, as far as delays and construction cost overruns. So your architect, unfortunately, encountered a massive heart attack. So you don't have a lot of time here to work. So that's something that's I think important to point out. But okay.
Well, has the owner looked at another architect or intending to do this on his own?
You can't speak from there. So
Can you come up again, please?
Unzer S. Karashi, 2701 West Alameda. He's no longer working. I can ask him if he'll complete this set. Otherwise, I'd have to secure a new architectural company.
Well,
At this point, nobody else is on the job.
No.
ultimately, Building and Safety does have the power to just rescind the permit, and we will start over, and then the project would come back to the board if they're not able to extend the building permit any
Well,
longer.
hopefully that won't happen.
It's been, believe me, there.
We approve it, the ball is in his court. I mean, he has to perform those
Right,
days.
and if Building and Safety chose not to extend the permit, we'll just start over and be bringing it back, so.
So would we put a time frame on this?
I think it's a good idea to put a time frame on it. I'll certainly provide a sense of urgency towards everybody, and I'll give staff the assurance that they need. And staff could maybe give you a list of
Specific list would be helpful.
specific list of professionals that maybe you could contact. But if you don't have any contacts, but that's, I think, the best way to handle this. You have to get help very quickly.
The architect that was working with him maybe also could provide some
Direction as far as
references
somebody
to
new.
other professionals.
Right.
It's hard for us to
Right.
someone a list of architects.
Oh, okay.
Actively avoid it.
My only
It is a
concern
unique scenario.
is the safety issue. If we get some kind of approval today, I think Building and Safety will continue the permits. Without that, I think they're going to insist on completing the structure with the original plan. Which,
Yeah, I think, if we don't make this, I mean, because he's going to be looking at the new building code.
May I ask a question that hasn't been asked? What's wrong with the original plan?
Yeah, really.
I mean, you could certainly change the color a bit and change some of the materials to exactly the material that...
That's not it, though.
I'll show you what the original plan looked like.
Yeah, it's what
That was a tool.
I thought I was confused, and now I'm severely confused.
Well, that's why I said we should disregard this one that it was...
While you're here, what is the the material for this shade structure?
Right now,
those
it's a metal post. It's an architectural feature, and just to give it some space for
There's
the people.
not shade covering or anything?
And it possibly a shade covering if it was approved, something that would disappear completely when not in
But
use.
they're just metal posts and,
The concept we've heard are the metal posts would rise from the railing on the deck there, and there would be guy wires connecting to the garage, and then you could roll out
Okay.
the shades over those, or
Okay.
pull them out.
I've always been a fan of more modern architecture, and since it's going to be my own home, I thought I would try to make something a little more modern than what was the existing structure.
Actually leaning towards more mid-century than.
Yeah,
Modern,
yeah.
modern mid-century.
Contemporary, shall we say, yes. I'm a little working.
Okay.
Thank you again.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think the owner understands the work for me. Staff does too, so.
Can you go through the
I can
conditions?
read back some conditions. First and foremost, all drawings will be updated. They will be coordinated. All elevations, plans, sections, and perspectives will match.
A grading plan.
Right. Yeah, that's another one. There'll be a grading plan that will show any new retaining walls and also the condition at the sidewalls at the driveway bridge, how that will be working. There will, we heard, and I'm not sure if everyone agreed, the final height will be verified through survey.
Survey,
Is it-
that's
okay.
correct.
Okay, so that's a condition. At the top floor, the corner element as built will remain rather than being built out to enclose the interior HVAC units. I mentioned the sidewalls at the driveway. And new landscape plan that also includes information about the front landscaping as well as the flat area at the rear, as well as the overall site. And that's
And the
everything.
time frame?
Oh, and the time frame, what would you like for a time frame? To be realistic, maybe a week to search for a new architect, and then maybe the
3
architects.
weeks?
You think two weeks total?
3 weeks?
Three, at least
3
three.
weeks, yeah.
3 weeks?
1st of August.
Or so by
Is that possible, 3 weeks?
Yeah, well, that's, I hope to get your expertise on that.
Make it a month.
Make it a month so it's realistic.
1 month. So drawings will be submitted to staff 1 month from today,
that'll be a Sunday, so by August 11th.
by August 11th. Okay.
Should that staff?
Exactly. There were 2 recommended conditions by staff. One, to have a different tone for the fascia,
A complimentary tone.
complementary but differing tone. And what was the other one?
About the more information regarding the retractable awning?
Oh, right. And then more information about the retractable awning.
Okay.
Is comfortable with that?
Okay, I'll
I
make a
guess it
motion.
comfortable will be.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions.
A second?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was a motion by Board Member Mardian, correct? And that was a second by Board Member Simonian. Board Member Mardian?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Chairperson Palmer?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Our last one of the evening is PDR 1326286 at 3450 Brook Hill Street. Mr. Kiesel?
All right, good evening, members of the Design Review Board. The last item before you this evening is case number PDR 1326286. It's a review of a proposal to add 112 square feet to the first floor and a new 1,428 square foot second floor to an existing single-family residence with an attached two-car garage. The project is located in the southeast corner of Brook Hill Street and Frederick Avenue at 3450 Brook Hill Street and is located on a 9,356 square foot lot. The plans are behind you. The site plan of the project does not change significantly as a result of the project and is similar to the homes in the neighborhood. The majority of neighborhood homes are located at the front setback line and have attached garages, as does the subject home currently, and that is proposed to remain. Aside from a cantilevered portion of the second floor, the proposed second story will be built entirely above the existing residence and thus will not alter the site plan of the subject site. While the yard is currently nicely landscaped, the board should consider requiring the applicant to submit landscape plans for staff approval, as construction of the project will likely adversely impact the existing landscaping. The project includes the addition of a second story. Homes in the neighborhood are mostly one story, although two-story homes are not uncommon. There's several. The neighborhood survey is posted. The neighborhood has a wide range of house sizes. This residence, after the project, will be the largest. Second story is recessed on the front and side facades to reduce massing concerns. Additionally, the roof is broken down into several elements, and there are portions of the roof that are one story, and that also helps with the massing.
Do we have the pictures? Contextual pictures?
Oh, I hope so, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's see. I'm sorry. Yep, here they are.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. The house is currently, as you can see, a ranch style, and will change. The style will change as a result of the project. Stucco and siding are proposed to clad the house. Staff recommends upgrading the proposed vinyl windows to a fiberglass or better material. That was suggested as a condition in the staff report. Also, while staff understands that the homeowners desire a terracotta roof, a flat roof tile would better complement the style of the house. Similarly, and this isn't contained in the staff report, staff believes that the front door shown on the
Material board?
material board,
It's different.
oh, right there, sorry, would be more appropriate as a simpler design. It would just match better with the overall style of the house. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and the architect and the current homeowners that are wanting to do the addition are also here if you have questions for them.
Have any questions?
I have a question. Now, the report says it's an addition, but this looks like a new house.
Well, technically, it is an addition.
And because I don't see any existing plans, does the 50% issue come up?
Well, internally it came up, and it was like 42%, I think I'm remembering. So it is an addition.
Okay.
It's not a new house.
The other question I have, asked this in the past about the story poles, directed story poles there. And I looked at the plan of the story pole, they're 22 feet high. Now, what I saw out there was just one height. Is that the plate line? Could that not include the ridge?
Typically, I think the story pole should show the ridge. I mean,
Yeah, they sometimes don't show a secondary ridge if it's below.
Well, I mean, this just showed the corners, and it just stopped. It didn't show the ridge, so I'm wondering.
oh, I don't. It doesn't. It shows the four poles, but there's none in the center.
Not
Yeah, I don't.
What is this purpose of the story pole if I'm not
To
seeing
get a
it?
general idea of the massing.
No, you're right. The story pole generally should show the ridge line. That's
Yeah,
the
it
most
should show.
important point. So.
Because I've noticed that on similar other projects too. Does staff go out there and look at it? Or we rely on the applicant?
sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. We have other people that go out to make sure that the sign is posted, and they look to make sure the poles are store poles.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No. Do we have the existing plans to put up?
The plans of the existing house? I don't believe so. What I can do is the first floor. It's a one-story house now. The first floor addition is right here. Oh, thank you. The first floor addition is right here. Actually, I think taking away a little part of the house right here. So the house, as it stands now, is like this. Oh, there's a small addition in the back too. I just saw right here. So it just pops out a little bit in the new kitchen and then the new living room. I don't have the floor plan of the existing house.
But that's the boundary.
Yeah, the boundary is basically that. And I think I'd advise you to look at the material board closely, because I know in speaking with the architect, the colors on the renderings and the sort of the 3D aren't totally accurate. So
the footprints basically stay like you showed.
right,
The second floor is popping out over the
footprint
garage.
is basically staying the same, aside from those small little additions.
And then the bath on the second floor is popping out.
And the second floor is kind of popping up. It doesn't project over the existing house any, aside from this little area here.
But the entire roof is
The entire
gone.
roof is gone.
No, there is
The garage area.
the garage area, and I think, and the architect can confirm, but I think he also mentioned this was
How are
staying.
you going to keep that?
I only have one card here, the owner. Do we have an architect?
There may only be one speaker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I'm-
Nobody else wants to speak? Here, I'll take your card. Thank you.
Yeah. Just go up there.
Everybody wants to speak.
you want to speak? Yeah. All right, I'm going to open up. I've got an applicant, an owner, and consultant. I don't know who wants to speak first, but I'll go with,
Why don't you let the architect,
I don't have an architect on here.
the Aram. Do you have a card for Aram?
Yes. It says manager.
Oh, okay.
Aram, could you come up, please? State your name and address for the record.
Aram Natsakanyan, 102 East at Prospect in Burbank. I'm an architect of the project. Roger, explain what is it. This is basically, it's not the new house. It's like an addition in the first floor that had a little in the back and a little in the front. The second floor addition. And what we try to do, we just try in a second floor, basically from both sides and from the front. We just at a recess to inside to like that it's not going to look that much massive. I mean, Roger mentioned that this one going to be the biggest house in the neighborhood, like almost like 3,400 square foot. But the family is big and growing up, so they need basically that extra bedrooms, and but we try to use that recess the second floor from the front, from the sides, in that it's not going to look the massive 3,500 square foot house. So, and about the style, so basically the neighborhood has the ranchetta style houses. We just try to do, to do the contemporary house, but to keep some of the elements of the ranch style, and try to use the color of the materials, like more earth colors. Pistachio, aspen. The stucco on the siding. If the staff recommends to change the window material from the vinyl to fiberglass, so we have to do it. But about the roof, basically, to be honest, the owners wants to have that terracotta roof, and if it's possible, and if it's acceptable with you, even though the owner have the photographs of the neighborhood, a lot of houses has the same terracotta roof. If you have any more questions, I'm gladly to answer.
Do you have any building sections, or have any building sections been submitted for this project?
I have sections, but I didn't submit the sections, basically. It's a flat lot, the portion.
What is your I see. Okay.
The roof plan?
And you've done the calculation of the 50%
Yes.
coverage?
Yes, we did.
And so is the only portion of the roof that's staying existing is this part?
And little bit, there, that one.
And all this is new?
Yes. All the other roof is new.
Are your setbacks based on legal non-conforming setbacks right now?
Basically, we have the existing setbacks.
Existing setbacks.
Yes. And on that portion, we are not doing any second floor addition.
Which is here?
Yes.
What is that setback?
If you look at the, can I come over show
Yeah,
that?
of course, come on up.
Where the pointer is.
If you look at the second floor plan, second floor, this wall basically is this. In the first floor, it have 5 foot setback, and in the second floor, it have. I believe there is another 5.
Do we have setback issues?
This one. This wall is the second floor wall. Actually, if you look at the front elevation, it's like this. This is the second floor, this is the first.
Like 3 feet or so, somewhere around there.
Something like that, 3 feet.
So the setback on the ground level is 3 feet?
No, setback in the ground level, there is a 5 feet here.
5 feet.
5 feet. But in the second floor, it's even though recessed more like at the 3 feet, 3.5.
Well, that doesn't necessarily matter, Aram. But even if the house did exceed the 50%, the 5 feet would still be fine.
Yeah, but
setback.
we are less than.
Because it's an R1 zone.
It's in R1 zone, yeah.
Everything conforms to existing zoning.
Since you're up here, what's your existing ceiling height that you have right now in the house?
Existing ceiling height, there is a 9 feet.
And what's proposed on the second floor is 9 feet as well?
Yeah, second floor.
And approximately, what is the dimension from your plate height to this?
This plate? Actually, this plate and this plate, they are the same, but I believe I have the
That's where the
elevation without the color, which one shows the height, right?
Yeah.
9 feet. And it looks like 9 feet.
9 feet, and that top portion is 7 feet long. This top. From this plate to here is 7 feet long.
Chiquito, can we pin that up?
Sure.
That section or elevation that you're referring to?
Can I do it there?
Wherever you'd like.
I mean, I don't want to cover
You can pin it on.
Dangerous up there.
You're not covered here.
Sure.
sections.
Well, yeah, if you have them.
I have the sections, right? I don't have section. Basically, this one is the other elevation. So right over here, there is 7 feet 1 inch from the top plate to the ridge.
Your story poles that you have right now, where is it in approximately?
22 is right over here, the
That's it?
top plate.
That's your,
Yes.
that's your story poles.
That comes 9, another 918,
But they're,
19, and another 3 feet. I mean, portion, the top plate is 22.
We don't have a picture of the house with the story poles on it, do we?
Unless Roger does, I haven't seen one. It's very unfortunate not to have story poles going up to the ridge line.
That's why I'm asking.
What, do you know what the minimum slope of a roof you could have with the roof that you're proposing?
Of tile? Mm-hmm. That's, I guess, 2.5 by 12.
All right, I have no other questions.
I had a question. Is your garage roof slope the same as what you're proposing on the house?
Basically, we
Because
just
you call ours
matching the
4.5.
house roof. We are just matching it
Matching
to
it?
the garage, whatever it is. Because garage, we are keeping it.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, well, we'll take that.
I have, let's see,
Musia McCain?
is it a McCain or John?
Musakan.
Musakan, oh.
Musakan.
You can pronounce it better than we did, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Musa Khan, and I reside on the mentioned property 3450 Brook Hill Street, La Crescenta, since 1989.
You,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was expecting some questions from you. The reason that we are willing to put addition second floor and remodel this house, since 89 we didn't do any work, and our kitchen and roof and basically the gutters, every place of the house is falling apart. And it was small for us, so during this remodeling, we thought to add another floor, second floor. And I have a daughter. Maybe she will come with us. She has 2 kids, and that's the reason. And we worked with planning staff, Mr. Platt, Roger, and our architect Aram last almost close to 15 months. We tried to bring you to submit you a project that could be acceptable by you. And if you have any questions, I am willing to answer them as much as I can.
Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
The last one I have is Jay Schmecker.
Yeah, I'm Jay Smucker. I live at 3451 Brook Hill, across the street. In 1965, 9 houses were built on this cul-de-sac by Shapiro, and I was the first one to buy the house. So I've lived in this neighborhood for the last 49 years. My comment has to do with and I have no indication that it's not true, but I'd like the exterior of this house to be compatible with the exterior of the other 8 houses in the cul-de-sac. Okay, now I have no indication that's not the case, but I'd like to kind of be sure that in the design of the trim and the fascia and so forth, that it matches the rest of the neighborhood. The other comment, editorial, relative to the enterprise design is I think you were going to check on the gardening or the landscaping, and I guess I would hope that we can put trees in the area where the rental cars will be parked.
That
We're a little late for that one.
Yeah, that project's already been decided.
But she was going to go away and give some thought to additional landscaping that could be
Well,
done.
you got a good memory.
Yes.
So that's essence of my comments.
Can I ask the gentleman a question?
Yes.
Since you're across the street where the large tree is, right? Is that the house with the large tree in the front?
Yes.
Any comments on the mass and scale and the height of the building?
No, it's fine. I have an etched stained glass in my door that is a picture of the mountain across the way, and I can still see the mountain across the top.
But the power poles, the story poles don't depict that height.
Correct.
Don't they depict the top at the peak of the roof?
That's why we asked the
We
question.
think
why
they
we
might
asked
not
the
be
question.
accurate.
It might be 7 feet above that.
Are you?
That's what we're questioning.
Because I eyeballed the first floor and added the first floor above, and it still looked like there was room for the peak of the roof to fall within the line across the top. 7 feet?
Well, I'm not sure if it's 7. I'm just saying it appears
Yeah.
to be higher than what's shown out there.
No, those lines are quite a ways up, and I think the roof will fall at that line, based on the eyeballing I did.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, could you go to come up again and address that?
Again, Aram Nasakyan, 102 East Prospect in Burbank. Basically, 7 feet going to be only this portion of the house. Definitely, if you look at the elevation, these sides are much, much lower, even though
but
this
where-
portion,
Where are the story poles now?
story poles are right over here. Where is that? At the top of the plate.
Right, so 7 feet
Yeah,
above
7
that
feet
would be...
going to be up only this portion, not the whole of it.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Mr. Mardian, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, Madam Chair. I have mixed feelings on the mass and scale on this project. I do feel it's a little proportionally, it's massive for the area, and as far as compatibility is concerned. And, that's why I asked the question whether 9 feet ceiling was the existing or not. By looking at the pictures, generally these homes are 8-foot ceiling. And if you look at the neighborhood there, although there's some 2 stories, but they're all pushed back, their setbacks are further, and the ceiling heights are about 8 feet. So I believe there's a little more room to reduce the mass and scale in this house. Dropping the ceiling height, and I'm assuming the slopes are the same as the garage. And my other concern is the balcony in the front. I don't know if that serves that roof line that he has is just eliminated by the balcony. And the element that's with the entry, I think it needs to drop a little more or do something with it a little. But as far as the tile, I do agree with staff. I know you were going to show me pictures, by the way, if we can see those pictures. That traditionally when a home like this should be more flat tiles. These are, some of these pictures or the area is more tract homes, and we don't want to lead into that direction on this house, especially when it's a ranch neighborhood. I did drive around quite a bit in this neighborhood. There were a lot of 1 stories. The cul-de-sac has a few 2 stories, but the proportions are much smaller than what I see here. I think there is room to reduce this house further. And I'd like to hear what your comments are.
Well, overall, I agree with Mr. Mardian's comments, but I think by reducing the pitch of the roof and by simplifying the roof a bit, you'll be able to accommodate some of these height issues, because that roof is artificially increasing the mass and bulk of it, whereas if you come up with a different roof design and maybe even a different material that will allow you to go shallower, for example, a metal roof, you'll be able to actually go a lot lower but still keep the size, let's say. Also, I think the vinyl windows are not really to the level that we approve, and so I would say fiberglass. I don't think we need to go as far as wood, but we have even gone down the direction of aluminum windows as well, if it's been on a contemporary side. But the building, the house itself really isn't of contemporary nature, so I think the fiberglass windows I would agree with. But overall, when we're kind of assessing it, the mass and bulk of it is really the main issues that come up. This portion of the entry, I think, is a bit odd as well, and so is the balcony in the front. It really does get in the way of the design, and as if you look at the perspective, that entry coupled with that balcony bringing a kind of a foreign design language to that neighborhood, whereas then if that entryway was redesigned and that balcony was maybe eliminated and the pitch of the roofs were maybe lowered, the house would blend in, and so those were my thoughts.
I'm in agreement with their thoughts, but I also notice this area here bothers me. It feels like it's hanging. It's just stuck on there. And it's just, I know it's overhanging here, but when you come up the street, you're going to be seeing this at the corner. And the fact that you're coming uphill, it makes it even more massive than it is. And
You're going to see
see
this is what you're going to see.
Or you'll
Coming
see
up
it
the
coming
hill.
south
Okay.
also.
Anyway, I just think it looks too massive coming up the hill because the other 2 stories are nestled in and down below at the end of the cul-de-sac. And with the story poles the way they show, it is going to be higher than it shows, and I think that whole front could be dropped down. And I agree with staff's comment regarding the landscape plan and the roof. I also think that front left, where the front door is it's like a design that goes with another style. Those are my comments.
Oh, what was your last comment?
The entry
Entry.
element that we worked
Oh,
with. Jay.
the whole entry, right.
Right.
We were, all of us worked on that for a while, and we thought it was a little bit Brady Bunch-esque, which both Jay and I felt were appropriate for the neighborhood.
Well,
Is the shape the issue there, or the height of it? If we brought that down and perhaps
the height is
introduced a
bothering
window
me.
at the second floor where the peak, where that ridge line is, to break up the second floor a little, would that help?
Yeah, because, when you look at it from the perspective, you have, this kind of a voided rectilinear thing. And so there's really doesn't adhere to the design language, really, just kind of a postmodern shape that pops up.
Yeah.
another style
Maybe
house,
a
I think
line
it would
in
be
here
okay.
and
Sure.
break it off.
So,
Your house.
Something.
I'll say maybe another, break in here. Up this or lower this.
It would actually be a nicer
A
entrance.
nicer entry,
Yeah,
right?
you'd have a more formal entry if that happened.
Well, I'm sorry,
yeah, can you help us?
you were blocking your your suggestion.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
Well, design it to look like Board Member Mardian's back.
Can I draw on here?
Sure.
Or,
Yeah,
maybe,
makes a break already.
a break and even maybe either lift this up a little or drop this down to create the.
So the shed roof on the left would die into a wall, and then there'd be a
Correct.
peaked
Correct.
gable above that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as shown, if they're proposing vinyl windows, I don't think they would look that way. They would have a much wider,
Yeah.
If I can, I'm sorry.
no, I'm just saying, it wouldn't look, aluminum windows would look more like this.
If I can just throw out that if we did the lowering of the left portion of the roof
Yes.
and keeping the kind of gabled entry, that actually that'll produce kind of what we typically in our design review meetings call the monumental entry that the design guidelines typically suggest that we not
Do that.
go with. And, if that's what you think is right for this house, that's fine, and it wouldn't set any precedent, but it's a little different than the direction we usually give applicants.
Well, and if I'm remembering correctly, in previous iterations of the house, they did have the monumental entry. However, it was much, much higher, and through, the back and forths with staff, it was reduced in height and then, as I said before, rejiggered a little bit to make it as it is now.
I guess my only comment was to readdress it somehow, whatever, the architect thought was appropriate to work with staff.
Even
Not
what he drew and make it shorter.
shorter, yeah.
Yeah, that would be one thought.
I would make it
I
shorter,
mean, if you're doing
definitely.
if you're going to do a pop out like that in a contemporary setting, you would almost clad it with metal and have a different color and really have a pop there. Whereas then you have a sterile white building and then you have this, maroon colored or dark brown metal siding pop out and it becomes a feature. Then it's different in a contemporary home. But in this setting, it just doesn't quite match the overall style.
Well, in the same talking, they could approach it differently. That left side could be just a continuation of that roof without
that
any
shed
break.
roof, yeah.
That shed without,
And it
blend
connects
in
over
with it.
to the bedroom.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the left side, the gable the side gable would come down toward the street?
Basically, we just continue.
Right, okay.
And then lower the entry.
Lower the entry a little bit.
Yeah.
Then you'll have a little more roof on that that breaks the building.
And it would make it look more horizontal.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the balcony. With lowering the roof, would the balcony be okay, or?
Well, it's one of those Romeo and Juliet balconies that face the
not
street that are
usable.
so small that it's never going to be used anyways. And so,
I think it'll be elegant without the balcony. in the
Yeah.
pavilion.
Okay.
Now, the other question I have, the windows are recessed. Do they have a sill or anything? Because I see some wood trim around the windows on the wood siding area. Any window sills?
Yeah, the drawings aren't very clear about that, but we could certainly make that a condition to have recessed windows with sills.
he almost has some sort of a stucco bezel around him in the perspective.
Right.
But there's nothing around the stucco ones. So they should
I
be
think that will help
consistent.
the elevation even more.
We have, is the material in the back hardy siding?
It just says wood siding.
Wood
Yeah.
siding. Okay.
What would you think of taking that pop out on the, up here, if we left this as it is and put that in siding so it doesn't, like it's, would just
And then,
look-
and then we could have some ornamental beams underneath it too, to kind of.
yeah, it needs something, it looks like it's hanging.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to go with the window surrounds, and he already has gone down the route of plaster or stucco with the hardy siding, there could be a wood trim, hardy trim around the windows in the portions that are siding. In the portions that are stucco, we could do a stucco bezel. And at the cantilever portion, we could continue the siding over that to blend it in more with some sort of structural beam underneath, perhaps, some sort of an ornamental beam that takes away from that cantilevered pop look.
Now, if we do that, that entire facade, except for the garage, would be clad with siding? Is that okay?
Which is fine, because I think the,
Would take away from that.
yeah, and the chimney could actually perhaps be the only portion that either has a stone or a darker color or something where it becomes more substantial. Yeah, so if you have some sort of a nice stone going up the fireplace, it'll give the house a lot of character.
Clarify on the same topic. Clarify which colors. Are we doing the rendering or are we doing the...
You really need to look at the material board.
It has the green.
Because the chimney's already painted or stuck within a darker color.
Well,
Where's the brown?
this aspen base is very peachy.
You mean good or looks like a peach?
Looks peachy. I mean, these colors
Yeah.
are quite nice.
Yeah.
Although then if you're going down this direction, you want a little darker tile, so it blends in more. But this, I think, is,
Where is that?
I don't know, it says the stucco.
Unless if those are the balconies and they go back with the garage wall? Isn't all the same color except the wood siding?
I think all the stucco is this,
This color.
is this
Stucco's
color,
two colors.
which should be,
Siding.
Oh, there's also the green.
They have a dark green and a
They
light.
have a patina green. Or pistachio. Yeah, more of a pistachio.
if you're gonna do siding, and if you're gonna go with a hardy trim, it comes with baked-on colors that last forever. So then you don't have to paint the house, and it's gonna last a lot longer. Like the heather green is a very nice color, and it'll go.
Close to that.
Yeah, it's very close to
close to
that.
that, right.
And then if you wanna, even if you go with a Navajo white instead of this, it's still gonna have enough of a depth to it where the stucco will blend in. But once you go with a peach, it's not gonna look all that great. It's gonna be very loud.
So Navajo white or something like it?
Something like
in
that.
place of the
Something
peach
without
color?
the peach, yeah, because,
Okay.
you know,
And the tile.
and then the tile, I think, well, depending what you do with the roof and how you're gonna lower the roof or the pitch might determine your roof material. So, but in general, if
Harder
it's,
to lower the pitch with that curved.
Yeah, I mean,
With Spanish tile, you can't go below.
3 to 12.
3 to 12 anyways.
12 is,
Right.
which isn't that, well, it's still lower at 1/3, so instead of 7 feet, I'll be, 4.5 feet.
Would the board consider an asphalt shingle, kind of just a flat roof surface?
With that,
Or lightweight,
Hardy board, yeah.
or lightweight concrete, or lightweight tiles. There's a lot of lightweights.
Yeah, it just depends how much texture and thickness you want on the roof.
Yeah, I think if we're going to go, I don't particularly have an issue with the tile, if they seem to like it. But if we go with a darker variety, that's going to match more of the colors.
Right.
But then the issue is the slope, in which case it can be limited to 3 to 12, which is going to lower the roof width from 7 feet to about 4.5 feet. So that'll lower the mass. And if we want to, so I'm okay with that, because it seems as though they really like the tile. Unless you guys.
it's a personal taste.
It's a personal taste, but
I think it goes with the house better to have a flat.
I would agree
it
with
goes
you.
very well with the flat tire. But I suggest if we're gonna some maybe rancho, but more of a true barrel versus a product. A little
Which
better,
will increase the height, the thickness of the roof.
yeah, but minimal.
But they can get the lower pitch with the flatter tile.
Yeah.
And I agree with the front door needs to be.
All right.
And the front door, you mean the entry?
No, the
actual front door?
actual front door.
Oh, okay. Well, what's the recommendation there?
The elevation.
Well, this was something that we didn't talk about
It's,
in
the style doesn't go.
my presentation. I thought that the front door needed to just be simpler
Okay.
to be
Style doesn't
more
go with the
complementary.
And then I had a question on one of your conditions. I think Board Member Simonian, we talked about hardy trim or whatever kind of trim around the windows where there is siding, and then you said a stucco bezel around this. And do you mean a projecting frame around the windows?
Correct, and I think it's already projected, that's the way it's depicted in the perspective, so kind of keeping in line with what he's already suggested.
I don't think I noticed that.
That's
This here? Exactly. And it could be as simple as a 2x,
right.
or it could be something more than a 2x.
That's fine.
It's already what you have.
Yeah, I didn't get a copy of the perspective, so we'll just make the condition to match what's shown in the perspective.
If you want to read those back to us,
Not really.
get them.
I will try my best. So, Roger, if you could help me.
Would you want me to start and then?
Well, I've kind of got them.
Okay,
Do you have your list?
I have a little bit.
Well, go
and-
for it. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start off with the easy stuff, the staff comments. Actually, number one, consider providing landscape plans for the site to include drought-tolerant landscaping for review and approval by staff.
That's a condition.
Condition, consideration, drop.
Condition.
Okay,
won't be
provide.
Yeah.
Windows shall be of fiberglass or better quality.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, here's the one where we just need to nail down what you want. Specify roof cladding more in keeping with the style of the residence.
What was it again? I'm sorry?
Specify the roof cladding more in keeping with the style of the residence.
Roof cladding?
The tile.
The roof material, okay.
I was trying to get fancy. The roofing material.
I'm going to let the other board members address that.
I mean, at least I wasn't necessarily clear with your discussion. I know the homeowners would really like the tile that they proposed.
I don't mind a tile, but tile that they're proposing, in my opinion, it's more of a,
Lighter terracotta.
like, it needs to be, in my opinion, more of a.
Richer terracotta,
Richer
yeah.
terracotta,
Richer
Burned.
in terms of color or the
You know the darker terracotta?
thickness? Because I think this is an S tile.
This is not quite an
No.
S. This
Oh,
is
it
not
isn't.
an S.
Okay.
It's just the one that
But a darker one of this would look better than a lighter one.
Yeah, a darker one.
And we're okay with the type
So we go
the
with the
shape
same
of the
type
tile.
that they want in a darker
Okay.
Darker shade.
I mean,
color.
I don't know.
I mean, they're
There's
already
this.
showing
This
it
has more
as a
variety.
more of a blend. If I might,
Or the brown tones. 'Cause
More of the browns, yeah. Just
For the roof?
yeah,
but it's kind of a blend there.
yeah.
It's kind of a
Would you,
To blend with the
you'd like to
colors.
see a more monochromatic?
mono, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the roof style, the roof material on the material board is fine,
We'll go with what they
but
would like.
but a darker monochromatic color.
I think this is perfect.
Yeah. There they
How
go.
about this one? It's at least a little closer than this.
Hard for me to tell whether this is
Or we'll just leave it a little
Oh,
dark.
it is.
All right. We'll let you decide later, yeah. It seems, it's a lot darker than on the material board.
Okay, all right. So, same style, darker color. Okay. So, let us move on. Eliminate the front-facing balcony. Okay. I'm going to need some help on the wording on this, Jay. The drop the
Entry.
entry.
Rework front entry.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
By-
redesign the front entry to reduce its scale to some degree and integrate it better with the existing roof,
With the existing shed roofs.
with the existing shed roof. And I sketched out a couple of options, so when we work with the
Okay.
designer, we'll have some ideas.
Okay. Provide hardy trim around windows within siding, and then provide beveling at windows with around stucco to
Stucco
match the
bezel.
perspective
Bezel, yeah.
rendering.
Provide a stucco bezel around the window that are located within the stucco portions of the facade.
Okay. Jay's got that.
I got that.
Install an ornamental beam below the cantilever.
And that becomes siding then.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. And the cantilever,
I think those are bathrooms.
it's a bathroom it's a bathroom, yeah.
Basically, this area, Mr.
Bathrooms.
Kiesel, it's, you see this is the floor line, and so you have about, 9 inches of space underneath it, and those couple of simple beams in this area
Okay.
will kind of eliminate that.
And
hanging in
you're
the air.
thinking like corbels coming forward,
Something
supporting
like
it.
that, yeah.
If I
Consider,
could just step back on when we were talking about the windows, we also had recessed windows with sills at the, oh no, I'm sorry, that's an old one. Got rid of that. Sorry.
consider facing the fireplace with a stone.
That's a consideration,
Yeah,
I think. It's up
That's,
to you guys.
okay,
yeah.
that's what I'd
I think
written.
it might be fine with the stucco once
Yeah,
we get
especially
the
if it's a
siding.
different color.
Stucco
Yeah.
is gonna be.
Should I say consider facing the fireplace with stone or using a
It's up to
darker
them, but I
color
don't- I
stucco?
don't see a reason to.
No, just, we don't need.
Maybe not even
Nothing.
mention it, yeah.
Not
Okay.
even mention it?
The stucco shall be a Navajo white or similar color.
Well, that,
Colors should all be complementary and that.
right. In other words,
Similar
these
to the
colors are
bottom three.
complementary, and this isn't. So whatever they choose should be in the same color spectrum
Okay.
with enough contrast.
Okay. And then finally, choose a simpler front door style. Fine.
One more in keeping with the architecture.
That's all I had, Jay.
And did you mention eliminate balcony?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And projection, Spanish tile.
It's the dog. At your discretion, it looks like we may have another speaker.
Yeah, I'm going to open it up in a minute.
Okay.
Let's see.
But let me just,
Great.
Roger, did you hit the lower the roof height?
Oh, no,
That's a, yeah.
Okay.
that's
So
the big one.
we'll lower the roof height through lowering floor-to-ceiling heights and changing the pitch, or?
I'm okay without lowering the ceiling heights, because then we're going to end up with an 8-foot.
No, I mean, ceiling, the pitch is the
problem.
Okay. Now, and then if we're lowering the pitch of the upper roof and it doesn't match the garage roof that's being retained, are we good with that?
I don't think it does now anyway.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, it doesn't.
I think it's a little different.
Yeah, it actually looks a little shallower, so
Shallower, yeah.
it'll
Look
look
at
more
the
shallow.
front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll lower the pitch of the roof to reduce some of the height. And
Okay,
that's
so-
everything I had.
I'm sorry. Let me just. I wasn't quite listening. So from currently, the roof pitch means that there's 7 feet between the top of the ceiling and the top of the roof, and you're reducing it to roughly 4 and change with the.
You just can't
Flatter
go any
pitch.
less
Well,
than
it's
3 and
it's
12.
something that they have to come up, because he calls out as 4.5 to 4.5 to 12. So we're saying, 3.5, 3 to 12.
You just can't go
somewhere.
less than that.
You know,
Okay, so
whatever it comes out to be.
whatever. So it's probably another 2 to 3 feet.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
It's 1/3 less than 7 foot 1 inch.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll try to avoid putting the footage in
Yeah.
our condition.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 2.
I'm just based on the conversation I just had with the neighboring property owner. I wanted to see if that clarified that for him.
Well, I was going to open, I know we got some questions, so I'm going to
Okay.
get it cleared up. So I'm going to open up the public hearing again, and the architect, or what do I have
Actually,
here? Gabriel Kahn, did you want to?
Yeah, I just.
Son of owner.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Can. I live at 3450 Brook Hill Street, the property in question. I just wanted to, and I know you probably already mentioned it, and sorry to keep you guys from your dinner, but the balcony in the front, that was put in specifically for my request, since that's going to be my bedroom. I was wondering why that has to be eliminated.
It's a good one.
There's a first for everything, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
It's not, can I respond?
Sure.
It's not so much I'm bothered with the balcony, it's just what is left with the roof is so minimal that, it's going to be a little flimsy. If you could achieve a
Push the
little
room back.
more roof,
Push the room back.
push the room back a little bit.
Well, one suggestion would be there's a large balcony at the rear. Both bedrooms could be pushed a little
Shifted.
toward the back.
It's a big one back
If
there.
you,
Make that work
I'm
pretty
open to
easily.
that. It's just, I feel that roof area that you've created there is so minimal, and it's just so flimsy. You can still have the balcony, I think, like creating a little more roof in front of it. So if that's something that you could work out, so be.
So does that mean that it could be eliminated as a condition that there can be no balcony in the front?
Well, you just asked us you like the balcony, correct?
Yes.
He's requesting that the condition to eliminate the balcony be eliminated.
Yeah.
Oh.
And,
As
and-
long
And I,
as, the-
and what I just
think
heard,
Okay, so why don't
the-
we word it this way, increase the roof area in front of the balcony,
right.
however you would achieve it.
Sorry.
does that help?
Yeah, that's fine.
one way we might do that is by recessing partly into the wall to create more balcony space, and then pull the face of it back, or
Or push the whole building
push the wall back, which
forward,
could.
because we don't want to create a break there. So it has to go back a little bit.
And there's also a chance if we lower that roof, we're going to be introducing a new window over the
So it
entry
needs to be studied.
foyer, I think. So we'll look at it.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. Did your question get answered, sir? Yes. Okay, so I'm closing the public hearing. Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion with approve with all the conditions as stated.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion was made to approve the project with conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Mardian,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian.
Yes.
And Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Great. Motion carries 3-0.
We have minutes to approve.
Correct.
Okay, that's for May 8th. We were all here. And I had one question. Oh, not May
You
8th.
could go. Have a good evening.
Thank you. May 8th, were there any questions on that?
May 8th? No, but I had a question on the, was it the only one? Is the May 8th?
We had one sent to us, which I had a question on.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. No, I have no, I'll make a motion to
Thank you.
approve the May 8th minutes.
So can we have a vote or a motion to approve for May 8th?
Yes, I just.
Okay.
I made it.
A motion was made to approve the May 8th minutes. Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Second it.
Roll call. Mr. Mardian.
Yes.
Mr. Simonian.
Yes.
Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Right, motion
Want to
carries
make
3-0.
comments on the last minutes? If there's a question, can we do that now? I noticed that that project we had with the hill lots stepping down.
Carolyn?
Yes, Carolyn. That it was, I read it as we requested to have, show the elevations of the houses on both sides, and I thought we wanted a streetscape.
That's right.
That's not the way it was written.
Said sections.
We wrote a site section through the adjoining properties, is
To
what
me,
I...
that
meant
means two
elevations.
houses.
Elevations of the adjacent properties.
Is that two houses, or is that a streetscape?
It's just 2 houses.
I thought we wanted more.
That would be a lot of...
Well, I'm not saying the whole block, but I'm just saying to see how that streetscape goes. Was that was the impression I
I
got.
thought we mentioned both houses, but we didn't say sections.
Okay.
We said elevations.
A streetscape.
Yeah. The streetscape elevations of
I just thought
adjacent
we
neighbors.
talked about more houses and the one on either side.
Who is that's Rather?
Rather.
On that project? Okay, I'll mention it to Rather, so...
I mean, it just gives us a better impression if we have a couple more. Other than that, I move to
Adjourn.
adjourn.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you, guys.